madness that I shouldn't be doing, but working on the AMX. If you followed us on Instagram, Facebook, then you know we sold the supercharger. It is no longer. It's gone. It's went bye-bye. And we sold it for $3,500. And with that being said, I came up with 5 options, put them in a hat, or actually I put them in a can, and then shook them up, and I drew an option. Options were AMC 401, LS 427, twin turbo fuel injection, or a turbo with a blow-through carburetor setup, or a tunnel ram with nitrous. And put those in a can, shook them up, and well, we ended up with tunnel ram with the nitrous, obviously. I know that was a little disappointing to some of you about the 401, but never fear, there might be something in the future for that still, but it's not going to go into AMX. Anyways, kind of go over what we got here. So we had $3,500. I was really fortunate enough, my friend had a tunnel ram that he's had for a while, and he couldn't use it, and he never sent it back, and he bought another one. But basically I got this tunnel ram for $200 with a top. The reason he couldn't do anything with this tunnel ram is because he bought it for a cathedral port heads, and this is obviously a square port intake, and obviously I have cathedral port heads. Well, when he bought this, he didn't know that they even had such a device, but they make 2 different kinds. You got to know which one you're getting. They make cathedral port to square port intake adapters, or they make square port heads to cathedral port adapters. So these were pretty cheap, about like $120 or something for the set. So that's how we're going to use that intake. And like I said, they make 2 different kinds. You got to make sure you know which one you're getting. They'll bolt on like that, and they'll kind of raise up and match the cathedral port just perfect, and then the square port intake will fit on that. And then with that intake I got for $200, well, we're having to do quite a bit of modification to it, but that's okay. It was dirt cheap. First off, this is for like a Holly Dominator or something, a really big carburetor. We're not doing that, we're staying within budget, so I had to get a carburetor adapter and drill holes and all that good fun stuff to get my 2 carburetors that are side mounted to fit on here. And then with that being said, there's some leftover material that's in the way, so I cut that out, drilled, tapped holes, and bought these little 3/8 plugs that I Loctited into the other holes. They go all the way through. And then the other problem with this top part to that tunnel ram I got, it was never for that tunnel ram anyways. These are all threaded. Well, they're also all threaded on the tunnel ram, except for the front too. So basically I got to go and drill out all these threads, which I started drilling some of them out, and so we can bolt this on. So with all that being said, yeah, I am cutting up a perfectly good top, but top wasn't going to do me any good, definitely didn't do my buddy any good, and for whatever reason when they sent it with this tunnel ram, it's not even the right top for the tunnel rams. But anyways, I was just kind of wanting to go over some of this stuff, and then these were the carburetors that were recommended to me by a couple of people. I'm not an expert in tunnel rams or carburetors, but I think these are the boosters. I could be wrong on that, but you have them where they have a little bar inside of them, and apparently that's not very good for tunnel rams. You kind of want to stay away from those. So these carburetors are 500s, so technically 1,000, but when you're running everything, you're going to be more like 800, something like that, 750, 800. But these carburetors are cheap, they're gonna help get this thing started and going. More than likely, we're gonna have to change carburetors down the line, vacuum secondaries and all that stuff, but these did have chokes and all the plates on them, which are very easy to take off because they won't fit sideways with all that stuff on there. So they've both been removed on these carburetors, and that's to get them to fit on there. So I'm going to quickly kind of put this together, and then we can kind of look at it. I only have one of these style Mr. Gasket adapters, but this is the style I want. I have an Edelbrock one we're going to use for just temporary, mounting the carburetors and stuff, but it's not going to be final. This style is going to be the final one I'll use. So just telling you that, so when people see that, they're not freaking out that I'm using really crazy oddball stuff. So let me get one of these thrown on, and we'll have a look at it. All right, well, that's with this plate kind of on here. So you can see there's just a little bit of a piece sticking out right there, but once you trim those out, it's just a straight shot down. I'll probably buzz that one out before final install. This thing will be taken apart again, I'm sure. I'm probably better off to use just a square, I think they're just called square bore gasket here, without the little circles. But like I said, this is all just temporary for right this second. So put that on there. Grab one of these carburetors. And they'll sit just like that. Now, if you were really getting serious on this stuff, I already know, and I've seen people do it. It's kind of Mickey Mouse to do it, but you could cut right here, leave yourself a little triangular area and cut off this, I'm not even sure what you would call this part, but cut this completely off, leave your vent, and then, it would be flattened basically like the rear. I've seen people do that. I don't know if that's going to really benefit you on anything. Like I said, I'm not an expert on carburetors, and I'm definitely not an expert on tunnel rams, but I've seen a few pictures, and being at car shows and stuff, I've seen a lot of people drive without a scoop or anything on their tunnel ram, and I've noticed that they've modified and cut their carburetors. So alright, well anyways, like that. So it's carburetors mounted on there. Like I said, this is the only other plate I have right now, so it's definitely not a real good plate. This is already broken. But like I said, this is all just for temporary use, so that'll go on there. Instead of using Allen heads, this one uses these weird screw type 3/8 bolts. So well, let me get this put on here, and then I'll go ahead and mount that other carburetor, and we can look at the clearances and stuff. Okay, there they are, all on, ready to go. I had to shorten this fuel line about 1 inch. I'm probably going to shorten this one too, just to keep everything symmetrical, but I have just enough room. So I may trim that up a little bit, but it does clears the fuel line, all that good stuff, and then the little adapter that's going to go in here will fit in between here, and that'll hook to the mounting system, which will be a side mount throttle setup. And like I said, these carburetors, they're probably not really meant to be used on tunnel rams. Obviously not this top anyway, since we're modifying it, but we'll just keep modifying it and make it work. And when I'm done with these carburetors, I got the boxes and all the choke stuff over there in the Gremlin. We'll sell them or give them away on the channel or something. Well, I guess the next thing is put the air cleaner pods on, which obviously there's not really anything to those. I'm just kind of showing this stuff because maybe somebody wants to see how you kind of put these on, or how everything step by step is on this. Obviously I don't have every part for this tunnel ram. I don't have the throttle linkage and all that good fun stuff, so I'm a little bit limited on what I can show you, but I just kind of want to build it and we'll get an eyeball at it and have a good idea how it's all going to look in the car. But, put your wing nuts on. You kind of should have them all tightened up and finalized and all that stuff before you put your scoop on, but like I said, we'll get to it eventually. And then we'll put the Summit scoop on. Just like that. All set up here. I'll have to trim one of these plates on the back side, but it's okay. Not very much, but just enough. So let me kind of put the bolts in that. They're pretty simple. They just go right up under, and there's technically 8 of them, so I'll stick those in there real quick and then we'll move on to how the intake fits in the car. Okay, this obviously isn't the easiest thing to do. So they send you these and you got these little rubbered washers, which we'll put those on eventually, but basically, because everything's kind of at an angle, you kind of got to get everything set up and wiggled around. There we go. Wiggled around, and then everything will tighten up. But get this one down. There you go. It looks like once you get the first bolt started, it's really not too bad. Everything else will kind of start lining up. Now there are O-rings that go on this. Both sides, they don't have gaskets, they have an O-ring style seal on them. So that'll make it a little bit more tricky, but I think it'll all work out at the end. Being pretty simple to put on. I'm not going to mess with the passenger side right now, but you get the idea. So tunnel ram fits on there fairly simple. Got tons of room. I can actually see my knock sensors. I can see everything in the back of the car. I used to have all that wiring and the supercharger and everything. You could never see the back of the car or how easy you can get to the transmission bolts on this LS setup. I mean, I can get to almost all of them with the bottom 2 from up here, so makes life a lot easier, but it's going to be a lot easier for me with not having all that wiring anymore. So anyways, like I said, the windshield wiper, I did some measurements and stuff. It'll just fit. And same thing, I'll just have a little bit of room. I may have to shave down on some parts there to get everything to fit, but on the back side you can, you have your different ports and plugs, or map sensor port, and we're going to do nitrous on this eventually, so we don't know or I don't know if I'm going to drill and port these holes so we can do the direct injection nitrous, or we're going to just do plates on it. But same thing, I don't know much about nitrous, but luckily I have a neighbor that does, so I'll be picking his brain when we get to that point. I already kind of gave him heads up, and he said, well, we'll get it sent down the track. So I kind of told him to set up and the carburetors and stuff, and he said, well, it's better to crawl than try to walk right away, so especially if you don't know anything about this stuff. So alright, well, I'm going to grab that guy and set him on there, and we'll take a final look at kind of how it looks inside the car. Alright, well, there it is in all its glory. So I don't think it sticks out of the hood too crazy, not much more than what a blower or anything would, but yeah, I think we'll cut that fuel line an inch short like I did that one, and that'll give us plenty of room for the windshield wiper motor. So I think that's all going to work out real good. Obviously I got a lot of work to do to this still. I just kind of got the ball going, since I was thinking about selling the supercharger, but it sold way, actually a guy approached me about it and really wasn't on my radar of getting rid of. I was gathering more parts for the junkyard Javelin build, but I figured if I'm going to sell that, I probably should have a backup plan for the AMX. And I know I was talking about retiring it for next year, but I think we're just going to get the AMX set up for drag racing. I mean, that's kind of what it is, and we're going to get the junkyard Javelin set up for Bonneville. So I think it's all going to work out to being good, because I got too many projects, but definitely want to continue doing Bonneville as much as I can, and I definitely want to do more drag racing. So with that being said, that's why I sold the supercharger, and I didn't do very much filming of the drag races this year. All I had were problems with the drive-by-wire, and we could never get that figured out. It would work perfectly half the time. Half the time you'd launch and it would just cut out and then give you the TAC communication error or low power mode, and we could never get that figured out. And we just had problem after problem all year with that. And luckily it didn't give us any problems in Bonneville, but that was just because we were lucky. So it wasn't a very good drag racing season again with that, and it sits at the tuners more than it gets driven, because there's a lot to do on that supercharger to tune it. So we're going to have an MSD box. It's going to be a lot more simple to write a couple timing programs on, and I think they have dip switches where you can you can have a couple programs on them for different timing. Obviously you'll have to have a totally different timing program if you're going to be running nitrous and all that, versus if you're trying to just drive on the street and maybe get fuel economy out of it. But and that's our next goal too, is I've watched quite a few YouTube videos and got on quite a few forums, and they claim you can get up to 15 to 16 miles per gallon on these if you do them right. So we'll have some fun and see if we can't get some good mileage out of it. But if we get 10 miles at a gallon, I guess, hooray. I know it's going to be a bummer, because I used to get around 22 with the supercharger set up, but you got to sacrifice a little bit, I guess, to go a little bit more primitive. But it's going to be a lot more fun, a lot more hands-on. I'm a lot more confident on tuning carburetors and messing with this kind of stuff than I am getting on the HP tuners and blowing up an engine. So, and then with this complete setup right here, what you see, I've got $1,200 into it. So we got plenty of wiggle room to get the rest of the parts, including the nitrous. The MSD box is a little over $400. The transmission controller, if I keep this 4L80 in this car, is $700. Got to get a throttle linkage stuff still, and nitrous, obviously. And there should actually be enough money to get a different camshaft, because I don't think that supercharger cam is going to really want to be ran on this, but I do got to look into that a little bit. Somebody recommended using it because if I'm going to run nitrous, we kind of want the same cam setup as a turbo or supercharger, but I don't know that for sure, so don't quote me on that. It's just what I've been told, and I've got to look into it still. But all in all, it's coming along pretty good, I think. I'm probably going to slow down on even messing with this right now. I just wanted to get what parts I could. As a lot of you know, getting parts even from Summit right now is getting tough. I just want to jump on this stuff while it was available. But and then I did a quick vote on the Facebook group page on where we should put the emblem I put on the supercharger, and a few of you that did like it, I had it where I could glue it on the front there or on the rear, and the only people would see it would be me, or on the top of the scoop, and everybody wants it on top of the scoop, so that's where it's going to go. And I think it's going to look mighty fine right there on top of the scoop. I guess if you're at least taller than me, which I'm only like 5'11", then you should be able to see that at a car show or anywhere you're going, so I can see it at my height. But alright, well that's going to be the video for today. The last thing I want to say is, unfortunately, the junkyard 401 Jeep truck has had a catastrophic failure. Maybe or maybe not. I don't know, but it has a dead cylinder, and I didn't have a bore scope to look down it. It's not a bad spark plug or nothing. It simply has no compression. However, it sounds like it's got a blown exhaust gasket. For whatever reason, when it does run, it just runs really rough and shakes bad. My 2 cents on it, without having a bore scope or really looking at it too hard, is it's got a blown head gasket. It's actually blowing the compression out over by the exhaust side somewhere, because it ran perfect and just did that when we fired it up. We actually went and got new tires on it. Imagine that, we put a little money into it and something happens to the motor. So with that being said, probably going to have a few videos coming out here really soon about trying to put head gaskets or pull the heads off or tear into that motor in the middle of winter, because it is snowing up there and it's very cold and there's no shop. So we'll probably be focusing on that here for a little while, then we'll get back onto the Gremlin, and as soon as I get enough parts gathered up for the Javelin, I'll start jumping into it, but I am slowly getting them. So alright, well, until the next video, thanks for watching.